The building stood quiet, abandoned by time, its walls half-cracked, filled with the scent of dust and old memories. The morning sunlight barely touched the cold concrete floor, but it seemed to find its way to a corner of the room. In that dim space, a figure lay on the ground, her body trembling with weakness, the cold pressing deep into her bones. Her name was Grace, an old woman who had once known warmth. Now, she was nothing but a shadow of her former self. She had been a loving mother, a caretaker, a fighter, a believer, and a virtuous woman. But life had beaten her down, piece by piece. Grace had once lived with her son, Thomas, in a cozy apartment. They didn't have much, but they were happy. Thomas had dreams, big ones. He always promised her he would make it. He'd go far, find success, and take care of her. But then, just like that, he was gone. He'd left to find work abroad, telling her he would send money, that he would be back for her. Before we continue, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to this channel. And comment where you are watching from to support our growth. At first, the letters came, and so did the money. Everything felt fine. Grace trusted Thomas, trusted his fiancée, Sophie, who promised she would take care of Grace while Thomas was away. But over time, something changed. Sophie's visits became less frequent. Her phone calls turned into nothing more than empty excuses. The warmth and care Sophie once showed disappeared, and in its place was something cold, something distant. One day, Grace asked Sophie, "Where is Thomas? He hasn't called. Is he okay?" Sophie, with her usual distant smile, waved it off. "He's busy. Don't worry, he's fine." But Grace wasn't convinced. Something felt wrong. And soon enough, the truth came out. Sophie wasn't just hiding Thomas's calls. She had moved on. She wasn't waiting for Thomas anymore. She had found someone else, someone new. And with that, Grace's world shattered. Sophie left, taking her things with her, and left Grace to fend for herself. Alone, without anyone to help her, Grace became a stranger in her own life. For months, she begged for scraps, slept on cold streets, and slowly withered away. No one knew she was out there, struggling, sick, and alone. And then, one day, something happened. Grace had been lying in the unfinished building for days, too weak to get up, too sick to move. Her body ached, her mind spun in a fog of exhaustion. She whispered to herself, "Please, someone help me." But no one came. No one could hear her. Meanwhile, a young woman named Emma rushed down the road, her nurse uniform pressed and clean, her face filled with concern. It was her first week working at the local clinic in this part of the city, and she was late. She wasn't going to let that stop her from doing her job, though. Emma had worked too hard to get this job. Her family, struggling to make ends meet, had worked even harder to send her to school. They had sacrificed so much for her future, and she wouldn't let them down. As she hurried down the road, she noticed a sound. A faint, weak groan, a cry for help. Emma's heart skipped a beat. "What was that?" she whispered to herself, her feet slowing as she listened. The noise came again, this time louder. It was the sound of someone in pain. Emma's instincts kicked in. She knew she couldn't ignore it. A nurse's duty was to help, no matter what. She followed the sound, heart racing in her chest, and turned into the narrow alleyway that led to the abandoned building. Inside, the air was thick with dust. As Emma stepped through the door, she saw her, Grace, lying on the cold floor, shivering and barely conscious. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Emma's voice trembled as she knelt beside Grace. Grace's body was cold to the touch, her pulse weak. "Please, help me," she whispered, barely audible. Emma's heart sank. She couldn't leave her here. This woman needed help, and she was the only one who could give it. "I won't leave you, I promise." Emma knew she had to act fast, but Grace was too weak to be moved on her own. The nearest hospital was too far, and there was no one nearby to help. Emma didn't hesitate. She ran as fast as she could to the clinic, praying she could get help before it was too late. At the clinic, Emma's supervisor, Matron Jane, greeted her with a stern look. "You're late, Emma. We can't afford any mistakes here." "I'm sorry, Matron," Emma said, her voice urgent. "But there's a woman in need. She's dying in an abandoned building. We need help now." Matron Jane's expression softened. "Take the ambulance. Get help quickly." Back at the building, Grace's condition worsened. Emma felt the weight of time pressing against her, but she couldn't give up. She couldn't lose this woman when she was so close to saving her. After what felt like forever, the ambulance finally arrived. Emma and the team rushed inside, carrying Grace out of the building and into the vehicle. "Stay with me, Ma," Emma whispered as she held Grace's cold hand. "We're almost there." As they rushed to the clinic, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the woman in her care. Who was she? Where was her family? Grace had no one left. No one except Emma. But little did Emma know, the life she had just saved was about to change her own life in ways she never expected. Because Grace wasn't just any woman, and Emma wasn't just any nurse. Before the night ended, everything would shift, and no one would be the same. The clinic was buzzing with activity as Emma hurried to the treatment room. She'd barely gotten any sleep, and yet she felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins. Grace, the old woman, was in the ward now, stable but still fragile. Emma had seen patients in worse conditions, but something about Grace's case felt different. Something gnawed at her heart. As she entered the ward, she saw Jane, the matron, standing at the desk, her eyes scanning the patient files. Her face was usually stern, but today, there was something softer in her gaze. Emma couldn't quite place it. "Emma," Jane said, her voice firm but gentle. "I'm glad you made it back in time. We've got her stabilized, but it's going to take a while for her to fully recover." "Thank you, Jane," Emma replied, her exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. "She was so weak when I found her. I was afraid I was too late." "You did the right thing," Jane said, nodding. "Now, let's make sure we don't lose her." Emma stepped closer to the bed where Grace lay. The old woman was still sleeping, her face peaceful for the first time in days. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Grace's story, more that she wasn't telling. The following day, Emma found herself walking through the clinic's quiet hallways, lost in thought. Her mind kept returning to Grace. How had she ended up alone in an abandoned building? And why didn't she have anyone to turn to? But there was one question that burned in the back of her mind. Why had Grace never reached out for help sooner? As she rounded the corner, she bumped into Jane. The matron's face was unreadable, as always, but today there was something in her eyes that made Emma pause. "Emma," Jane said, her voice low. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something." Emma raised an eyebrow. "What's on your mind?" Jane hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking toward the treatment room. "You know Grace's condition is dire. But we have a problem. Her bills aren't paid. She doesn't have insurance, and we don't have the funds to cover her care." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. "What are we going to do? She can't just be sent away. She has no one." Jane looked at her, her expression hardening. "I know. That's why I'm talking to you. I'm going to approve her treatment, but it's going to come out of your salary. I can't afford to cover it." Emma blinked in surprise. "What do you mean? My salary is barely enough to cover my rent. How am I supposed to pay for her care?" "I'm aware of that," Jane said, her tone softening. "But this is the best we can do right now. You have a big heart, Emma. I know you'll find a way to help her." Emma's heart raced, a wave of guilt washing over her. She didn't have much to give. She barely had enough for herself. But the thought of leaving Grace alone again, of not doing everything she could to help her, was unbearable. "I'll find a way," Emma said, her voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." The next day, Emma went back to Grace's room. She knew it was time to talk to her, to ask questions. But when she walked inside, Grace was awake, her eyes cloudy but focused on Emma as she approached. "Ma'am, how are you feeling today?" Emma asked gently. Grace smiled faintly. "Better. The pain isn't as bad, but I still feel weak." Emma sat beside her. "That's good to hear. But I need to ask you something. I know you've been through a lot, but I need to know more about your past. Who are you? Where's your family?" Grace's gaze faltered for a moment. The smile faded from her lips, replaced with a sad, distant expression. "I don't have anyone left," Grace whispered. "My son, he was all I had. And he's gone." Emma's heart sank. "What happened? Where is he?" Grace closed her eyes, tears pooling in her eyes. "He left. He promised to take care of me. But he disappeared. I don't know where he went, and I don't know what happened to him." Emma didn't press further. She knew Grace had suffered enough. Instead, she reached out and touched her hand. "I won't leave you, Grace. You're not alone anymore." Hours later, Emma found herself back in her small apartment, trying to make sense of everything. She barely had enough for herself, but now she had to find a way to pay for Grace's treatment. The weight of the situation felt heavier than ever. She picked up her phone, scrolling through her contacts. The only person she could think of to help was her family. But they were struggling too, and asking them for money seemed impossible. As she sat there, staring at the phone, A sudden thought struck her. Could she go to her supervisor for help? Jane had been kind, but Emma wasn't sure if she was willing to help her in the way she needed. But then again, what choice did she have? Meanwhile, far away in another part of the city, a man named Daniel sat in his office, his phone pressed against his ear. He listened intently to the voice on the other end, a frown forming on his face. "Have you found her?" Daniel asked, his voice sharp. The person on the other end answered, "Yes, sir. We have her location. We believe she's at a clinic in Zuma City." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Grace, the woman he had been searching for, the one he had lost track of years ago. She was here. But what was she doing in this small clinic? As the sun set on Zuma City, Emma stood by the clinic's entrance, her mind swirling with confusion, fear, and hope. She didn't know what the future would hold for Grace, or even for herself. But one thing was clear: she had made a promise to help, and she would do whatever it took to keep that promise. Emma stood at the clinic's entrance, the evening air cool against her skin, yet she felt a heat rising in her chest. Grace's situation had taken a turn. Every moment was a reminder of how much she was now responsible for. The weight of that responsibility was becoming unbearable. Her thoughts were interrupted when Jane, the matron, approached. Her expression was as unreadable as ever, but today, there was something different about her. "Emma," Jane began, her voice low and serious. "We need to talk." Emma felt her heart race. "About Grace?" she asked. Jane nodded. "Yes, I need you to know something." Emma braced herself, unsure of what was coming. "What is it?" Jane looked over her shoulder, as if to make sure no one was listening. "I didn't want to tell you this before, but it's time you knew the truth." Emma's confusion deepened. "What truth?" "There's something about Grace's past that doesn't add up," Jane continued. "I've been in this clinic for a long time, and I know when someone's hiding something." Emma felt her stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" Jane lowered her voice. "I don't think Grace is who she says she is. There are rumors, and there's evidence that suggests she's been lying about her life." Emma stared at her, unable to process what she was hearing. "What do you mean?" "She's been through enough." Jane's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. "I'm not saying she's a bad person, but you need to understand that things aren't always as they seem. And we both know you re-putting yourself in danger by helping her without knowing the full story." Emma couldn't shake the words Jane had said. The more she thought about it, the more unsettled she became. Grace's past, the mysterious disappearance of her son, the way she had ended up in an abandoned building. Was it all just a tragic accident? Or was there more to this story than Emma realized? That night, Emma couldn't sleep. The clinic, the streetlights flickering outside her window, everything felt different. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on her. Meanwhile, in a luxurious hotel suite across the city, Daniel sat by the window, staring out into the night. His mind was racing with thoughts of Grace, the woman he had once loved, the woman he had lost. He hadn't expected to find her here, in Zuma City, in a small clinic of all places. It had taken him years to track her down, but now, she was within his reach. He clenched his fists, but he couldn't just walk in and claim her. There were too many questions, too many lies that needed to be unraveled. The next morning, Emma walked into the clinic with a heaviness in her chest. She had barely slept, and the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right with Grace's past kept eating at her. She found herself standing outside Grace's room, peering inside through the small window in the door. The woman lay in bed, looking weak but peaceful. Emma had promised she would help, but now, the question was, how far would she go to keep that promise? As she stepped inside the room, Grace's eyes flickered open. "Good morning, Grace," Emma said softly, her voice filled with the concern she couldn't hide. "Good morning, my child," Grace replied weakly, her voice still raspy from the illness. "How are you feeling today?" Emma asked, pulling up a chair next to the bed. Grace smiled faintly. "Better, a little. Still tired, but I know I will be okay." Emma took a deep breath. "I need to ask you something, Grace. I know you've been through a lot, but I need to know more about you. Who you are. Your past." Grace's eyes widened, and for a moment, Emma saw a flicker of fear. Grace's hand twitched at her side, and Emma noticed how tightly her fingers curled into the sheets. "I've told you everything," Grace said softly, her voice almost pleading. "I don't have anything else to say." Emma reached out and gently placed a hand on Grace's. "I'm not trying to push you, but I need to understand. You have no family, no one left to help you. I want to help, but you need to trust me." Grace's face paled, and Emma could feel the tension rising in the room. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Grace whispered, "You don't know what I've done. You don't know what's been done to me." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Grace turned her head toward the window, her eyes staring out into the distance. "I'm not the person you think I am. I've made mistakes, terrible ones." At the same time, Daniel was getting closer to the truth. He had hired people to dig into Grace's past, to find out where she had gone all these years. The more he learned, the more the pieces didn't fit. There were gaps in her history, secrets she had kept hidden, and he knew that once he uncovered everything, nothing would ever be the same. That afternoon, Emma found herself standing at the clinic's front desk, nervously twirling a pen between her fingers. She hadn't heard anything from Grace since their conversation. The room had been quiet, too quiet, and Emma knew something was wrong. She couldn't just sit around anymore. She had to find out the truth. And if Grace wasn't going to tell her, then maybe someone else would. She glanced at the receptionist. "Can you pull up the records for Grace?" she asked, her voice steady but urgent. The receptionist hesitated but then nodded, typing quickly on the computer. "Here it is. Grace Martin. There's a note here saying she was admitted under unusual circumstances, but no family details." Emma's eyes narrowed. "Unusual circumstances?" The receptionist shrugged. "That's all I can find." Emma's heart sank. She knew there was more to this story than what she was being told, and she was determined to uncover it. As the day passed, Emma returned to Grace's room, her mind racing with questions. She had to know the truth. She couldn't keep helping a woman who might be hiding dark secrets from her. But when she entered, Grace was already gone. The bed was empty, the sheets crumpled as if she had never been there. Emma's heart raced. Where was she? Then, just as Emma turned to leave, she heard a faint sound from the hallway. A voice calling her name. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to this channel to support our growth, because this story is just getting started. Emma froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had just walked into Grace's room, expecting to find the old woman resting, but instead she was met with an empty bed, the sheets still warm, but crumpled as if Grace had been there only moments ago. Her breath hitched as she spun around, scanning the hallway for any sign of Grace. Had she wandered off? Was she in trouble? Emma's mind raced with questions she didn't have answers to. The feeling of unease settled heavily on her chest. Then, from the end of the hallway, she heard a soft, familiar voice. "Emma." She turned sharply to see Grace, standing near the window at the end of the corridor. The older woman was hunched over slightly, her frail frame leaning against the wall for support. Emma's legs moved instinctively, her heart racing. "Grace," she called, rushing toward her. "What are you doing out here? You shouldn't be up." Grace turned slowly, a weak, almost apologetic smile on her face. I couldn't stay in that room any longer, Emma." Emma reached her, her hands gently gripping Grace's arm to steady her. "You need to rest. You're still so weak. Come back to your room." But Grace pulled away, her voice trembling with a quiet intensity. "No, I have to tell you something." Emma felt a chill run through her. She nodded, leading Grace to a nearby chair, her concern deepening. There was something in Grace's eyes, something that wasn't just exhaustion. Emma could see the weight of hidden secrets behind those eyes. "I'm listening, Grace," she said softly, sitting down beside her. Grace's hands trembled as she spoke. "I've lived a life that's filled with regret. But the worst part of it, Emma, is the lies I've told. Lies that have led me to this point. To you." Emma's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. "My son, Thomas. He's not who you think he is. And I'm not who you think I am either." Emma's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" Grace took a deep breath, her body trembling as she gathered the strength to continue. I left something behind. Something that no one knows about. And if it comes to light, it could destroy everything. Not just me, but Thomas, too." Emma felt a wave of confusion wash over her. "What is it, Grace? You're not making sense." Grace looked down at her hands, her eyes welling with tears. "I don't know how to explain it. But my past, I'm running from it. And I didn't want you to be a part of it. I didn't want you to get caught in the mess I made." Meanwhile, in a sleek black car, Daniel sat, his eyes focused on the street ahead. His driver steered through the busy city, but Daniel's thoughts were far from the bustling surroundings. He couldn't stop thinking about Grace. Every piece of information he'd uncovered so far only made the mystery surrounding her deeper. She wasn't just an old woman. There was something more to her story, something hidden beneath the surface. He had spent years trying to track her down, following dead ends and rumors. And now, she was in Zuma City, lying in a small clinic under Emma's care. He couldn't just show up and claim her. Not like this. Not without answers. As the car sped toward the clinic, Daniel's mind was consumed by one question. Why had Grace disappeared all those years ago? Back at the clinic, Emma listened intently to Grace, her heart heavy with every word. I don't want to drag you into this, Emma, Grace continued. But the truth is, I've been hiding from my past for far too long. And I can't keep running. Emma squeezed her hand, her voice gentle but firm. You don't have to run anymore, Grace. Whatever it is, I'll help you face it. You're not alone. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I've made too many mistakes. I've hurt people who didn't deserve it. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to escape. Emma's heart broke for her. What happened, Grace? Grace hesitated before answering. Years ago, before Thomas was born, I was involved with someone dangerous. I thought I could get away from that life, but I didn't. I was foolish, and now, I've put Thomas in danger. Emma's confusion deepened. What do you mean? How is Thomas involved? Grace's eyes filled with fear. The man I was with, he's the reason Thomas had to leave. The reason he's been gone all these years. Emma's stomach twisted with anxiety. Who is he? What does he want with Thomas? I don't know, Grace whispered. But I'm afraid he's still looking for me. And if he finds Thomas? Emma's mind raced. We need to find out what's going on, Grace. You're not in this alone. We'll figure this out together. Elsewhere in the city, Daniel finally arrived at the clinic. His heart beat loudly in his chest as he stepped out of the car. He had no idea what he would find inside, but he was determined to uncover the truth about Grace. He entered the building, his eyes scanning the interior. It was small, old-fashioned, but it had a certain warmth to it. A receptionist looked up as he approached. Can I help you, sir? I'm here to see someone, Daniel replied. Grace Martin. The receptionist's face shifted slightly, as though she recognized the name but didn't know how to respond. She glanced at the computer screen. Grace Martin. She's in the ward. But I don't think you'll find her here long. She's under special care. Daniel's curiosity grew. What do you mean by special care? The receptionist hesitated. She's a complicated case. A nurse found her abandoned. We don't know much about her past. Daniel's thoughts swirled. I need to see her. Back in the ward, Grace's breathing had become shallow again, her eyes closing slowly as Emma sat by her side. She could feel the weight of the secrets Grace was carrying, but now was not the time to press her further. Emma had made a decision. She was going to find out everything, whether Grace was ready or not. Just as Emma stood to leave, she heard a sound. Someone was coming down the hall, fast footsteps echoing through the quiet clinic. Before she could turn around, the door opened, and Daniel walked in, his eyes immediately locking onto Grace. Emma froze, a chill running down her spine. Who was this man? And why did his presence feel like the beginning of something dangerous? The tension in the room thickened as Daniel stepped inside, his eyes immediately landing on Grace. Emma stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The man's presence felt like a storm was about to hit, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for the aftermath. Grace, barely awake, turned her head slowly toward the door, her eyes widening as she saw the man standing there. Who are you? Grace whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel's jaw tightened as he took a step closer. Grace, he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. It's been a long time. Emma glanced between them, her confusion growing. Do you two know each other? She asked, trying to make sense of the situation. Grace's hand trembled as she reached out, the faintest hint of recognition in her eyes. Daniel, is it really you? Daniel nodded, his eyes full of something Emma couldn't quite read. Regret, pain, and something else. Yes, Grace. It's me. Emma took a step back, her heart racing. She had no idea what was going on. This wasn't just any stranger walking in. This man was someone important to Grace, someone who had been part of her past, a past that now seemed to hold even more secrets than she'd realized. What is happening? Emma's voice was a mixture of anger and confusion. Who is he, Grace? Why didn't you tell me about him? Grace's eyes fluttered shut for a moment, and she took a shaky breath. I didn't want you to know, Emma. I didn't want anyone to know. Daniel's gaze softened as he stepped closer to Grace's bedside, his eyes filled with guilt. It's not her fault, Emma. I've been a fool. I've made mistakes, Mistakes that have cost me everything. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. She had no idea who this man was, but his words carried so much weight. What was it that he had done? And why did Grace look so broken? I need to know what's going on, Emma said firmly, her voice trembling. You both owe me that much. Daniel hesitated, looking at Grace with a mixture of fear and longing. Grace, I don't know how to say this, but there are things you need to know. Things that have been hidden for years. Grace shook her head weakly, tears welling in her eyes. I've carried this secret for too long. I've kept everyone in the dark, including you, Daniel. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know what I did. Daniel took her hand gently, his voice soft but firm. You don't have to keep running anymore. It's time to face the truth. Emma's mind was reeling as she watched them. She had seen the pain in Grace's eyes, the shame that seemed to hold her back, but now it seemed like the floodgates were about to open. Grace, Emma said softly, you don't have to hide anymore. We can help you. Grace's voice trembled as she finally spoke. I wasn't always a good person, Emma. I made terrible choices. I got involved with a man who wasn't what he seemed. He promised me a life of wealth, of luxury, and I believed him. But he wasn't the man I thought he was. He was dangerous. And when I found out who he really was, I tried to leave him. But he found me. He found us. Daniel clenched his jaw. That's when I left. I thought I was protecting her, but I wasn't. I should have been there. I should have fought for her. Grace closed her eyes, her tears falling freely now. I tried to leave him. I thought I could escape. But he found me, and he made sure I paid for trying to run. I lost everything. My home, my family, my son. Emma's heart twisted as she listened to the pain in Grace's voice. She had no idea how deep this ran, how much Grace had suffered. But now it all made sense. This wasn't just an ordinary woman. She had a dark past that had been hunting her, and that past had finally caught up to her. And Thomas, your son, Emma began, her voice barely a whisper. What happened to him? Grace's eyes filled with sorrow. He was the one thing I couldn't protect. I sent him away to keep him safe, but I failed him. I failed us both. Daniel stepped forward, his voice heavy with emotion. I was part of that. I let her go. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. Now, I'm here to make it right. Emma's mind was spinning. So what now? What happens next? Are you going to take her back to that life? Daniel's expression turned grim. No, I can't undo the past, Emma. But I can help her. I can give her a future. A real one. A chance at redemption. Emma looked between them, unsure of what to believe. There were so many questions, so many things left unsaid, but one thing was clear. The truth was finally coming out. And with it, everything was changing. But just as Emma was about to speak, the door opened with a soft creak, and another figure stepped inside. A man in a suit, his face shadowed, his presence commanding. Daniel's head snapped toward the door, his face darkening. What is he doing here? The man stepped forward, his eyes cold as he met Daniel's gaze. I think it's time we all had a little talk, don't you? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to this channel to support our growth. The tension in the room crackled as the man stepped further into the hospital ward. His expensive suit and cold eyes sent a chill down Emma's the nurse spine. Daniel, too, seemed to stiffen at the sight of him. Who are you? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper, though she felt her chest tighten with suspicion. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he focused solely on Daniel, his gaze filled with a knowing sort of animosity. You've been busy, haven't you, Daniel? Daniel's jaw clenched as he stood up straighter, his eyes narrowing. This isn't your business, Robert. What do you want? Emma's heart raced as she looked between them. She had no idea who this man was, but the hostility between them was undeniable. Something about this confrontation felt dangerous. Robert's lips curled into a tight smile, but his eyes were full of malice. What do I want? He repeated, his voice low. What I've always wanted. What's mine? At the mention of the word mine, Grace's went pale. She shifted uncomfortably in the bed, her trembling hands gripping the sides. Emma turned to her, her heart sinking. Grace, Emma said softly. What's going on? Grace's voice was barely a whisper as she spoke. He's the one. The man who destroyed everything. He's the one who's been looking for me all this time. Emma felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted. The man standing before them wasn't just a stranger. He was the very reason Grace had been running all these years. And now, he had found her. Robert took a slow step toward Grace's bed, his eyes lingering on her with a mixture of contempt and hunger. You think you can escape me, Grace? After everything I've done for you? You think you can hide in some small clinic, protected by these people? Daniel stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. Leave her alone, Robert. She's not yours. You don't get to control her anymore. Robert laughed, the sound hollow and cruel. Control her? Oh, Daniel, you really are a fool. She was never yours to protect. She belongs to me. Emma felt her blood run cold as she pieced everything together. This man wasn't just part of Grace's past. He had been a force that had controlled her life, dragged her into a dangerous world that had nearly destroyed everything. Grace, Emma said, her voice firm. You don't have to listen to him. He's just a man who's trying to control you. You can be free from him. Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. It's not that simple, Emma. You don't understand what he's capable of. He has connections, power. He can take everything away from us. Robert stepped closer to Grace, his voice a whisper now. You think you can escape me? You think you've won just because you're here, hiding in this clinic? He leaned down, his face inches from hers. I've already taken everything from you, Grace. I can take it all again. Just like that. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of Robert's words in the air, the suffocating fear that hung over Grace like a dark cloud. But she wouldn't back down. Not now. I won't let you hurt her anymore, Emma said, stepping forward and standing between Robert and Grace. Robert looked at her, his gaze cold. And who are you to stop me? A nurse? You think you can protect her? I'm not going to let you intimidate her any longer, Emma said, her voice steady but filled with defiance. You don't control her. Not anymore. Outside, the world felt distant. The sounds of the city, the hum of the streets, everything seemed muted. Inside, the silence was deafening. The tension between them grew, palpable, suffocating. But it was clear, Robert wasn't going to walk away without a fight. Daniel stepped forward, positioning himself between Emma and Robert. His voice was low, dangerous. If you think you're going to walk out of here with her, think again. I'm done running. Robert's eyes flashed with fury. You don't have a choice, Daniel. You can't protect her. You never could. Emma's heart raced. She could feel the dangerous storm brewing, and she knew something had to give. Suddenly, the door opened, and two officers from the local police force stepped in. Their uniforms were crisp, their presence authoritative. They looked at the scene unfolding in the room and immediately moved to stand beside Emma and Daniel. Is everything all right in here? One of the officers asked, his voice firm but calm. Robert's expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. This doesn't concern you, officer, he said, his voice smooth and controlled. I'm just having a private conversation with an old acquaintance. The officer's gaze hardened. We've had complaints about you before, Robert. We don't need to go through this again. Robert hesitated, his eyes darting between the officers and Daniel. He could feel the pressure mounting, but he wasn't ready to back down yet. I'm leaving, he said coldly, before turning toward the door. This isn't over. Grace is mine. Don't forget that. As Robert exited the room, the officers followed, ensuring he didn't make any more trouble. But Emma could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air. This wasn't over. She turned to Grace, who had fallen silent, her face pale and her hands trembling. Are you okay? Emma asked, kneeling beside her. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know. He's never stopped. He's always been in control of my life. I've been running from him for so long, Emma. I don't know how much longer I can keep going. Emma's heart ached for her, but she didn't have time to dwell on that now. They had to move forward. They had to face whatever came next, together. You're safe here. I promise you, Emma said, her voice steady. We'll figure this out. You don't have to be afraid anymore. As the door clicked shut behind the officers, Emma's mind raced. She had no idea what Robert would do next, but she knew one thing for sure. He would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. And now, with the truth finally out in the open, the stakes were higher than ever. Emma had promised to protect Grace, and she would keep that promise, no matter what. But as the day faded into night, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something even darker was lurking just around the corner. The days after Robert's confrontation felt like a dream to Emma. She had never expected her life to take such a turn, and yet, here she was, part of a story that seemed too complicated, too full of pain, and too much love for it all to be real. But now, with Grace recovering, Daniel back in her life, and Thomas on his way home, Emma felt as if a new chapter was beginning. She stood in the clinic, watching as Grace laughed softly with Daniel. His eyes were filled with regret and longing, but there was also something tender, a love that had never truly died. "You've been through so much," Daniel said quietly to Grace as he took her hand, his voice filled with emotion. "I never should have left you. I should have fought for you." Grace looked at him, her voice soft but firm. "I understand why you left, Daniel. I understand now. We both made mistakes, but here we are. We've survived. We have a second chance." It felt like a dream to Emma. Seeing Grace and Daniel, once so far apart, now reunited and finding peace with each other. The bond between them, though strained, was still there, and it was clear that this was the start of a new life for both of them. Meanwhile, in the bustling city of Zuma, Thomas finally arrived at the clinic. His heart raced as he stepped out of the car and into the busy streets, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of his mother and the woman who had saved her, Emma. He hadn't known what to expect, but he had a feeling things were different now. The warmth in the air, the way the city seemed to buzz with life, it all felt like a fresh start. He had grown over the years, his success and wealth giving him the means to change everything. But he realized that what he truly needed wasn't just money. It was the love and family he had lost. As he approached the clinic, his thoughts turned to Grace, his mother. He hadn't spoken to her in years, not after the lies, the betrayal. And now, he was finally here, ready to face the truth. He entered the clinic, his eyes scanning the waiting area. He saw Daniel first, standing with Emma, their faces filled with quiet relief. And then, he saw her, Grace, sitting in a chair by the window, her face glowing with the peace that had been missing for so long. The moment their eyes met, everything else seemed to fade. Thomas walked toward her slowly, his heart beating faster with every step. "Mom," he whispered, his voice shaking. Grace looked up, her eyes filling with tears. "Thomas." She stood up, her legs unsteady, but her arms opened wide. Without another word, they embraced, both of them holding on tightly as if they would never let go again. All the years of separation, of pain, faded into the background as mother and son reunited. As they pulled away, looked at Thomas, her voice thick with emotion. "I never gave up on you. I waited, prayed, and hoped you'd come back to me." Thomas smiled softly, brushing a tear from his mother's cheek. "I'm sorry for everything, Mom. For everything that happened. I should have been there for you. But I'm here now, and I'll never leave again." Emma watched the reunion with a soft smile, her heart swelling with emotion. This was the moment she had hoped for, a family reunited, with love and forgiveness lighting the way forward. She hadn't just been part of Grace's recovery. She had been part of something far bigger, the healing of broken hearts and the rebuilding of a family. Later that evening, as the stars twinkled above Zuma City, Emma sat with Daniel in the small park behind the clinic. She had known this moment would come, but that didn't make it any easier. Her heart was full, yet conflicted. Daniel looked at her, his voice low. "I can't thank you enough, Emma. You've done more for Grace than I could have ever done. You saved her." Emma turned toward him, her expression softening. "I didn't do it alone, Daniel. I just helped her. She's the one who fought through all the pain. She's the one who made it through." Daniel nodded, understanding. He reached out and took her hand gently. "But you've done something I couldn't. You've given her hope. You've given her a reason to keep going. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you for that." Emma's heart fluttered as she looked into his eyes. She could feel the sincerity in his words, and it made her realize something. They had both been part of something bigger than themselves, a journey that had led them to a place of healing, of forgiveness, and of love. "You don't have to repay me," Emma said softly. This was just meant to be." Meanwhile, far away in another part of the city, Robert, the man who had caused so much damage in Grace's life, was being taken into custody. The police had finally gathered enough evidence to charge him with his many crimes. His life of power and control had crumbled, and now he was facing the consequences. As he was led away in handcuffs, Robert's eyes darted around, but there was no escape. His past had caught up to him, and this time, there was no one to save him. For years, he had manipulated and controlled Grace, but now he would pay for his sins. As the days passed, things began to settle. Grace and Thomas spent time together, rebuilding their bond. Emma's life, too, was starting to feel like it had found its place. She had helped Grace, but now she was ready for her own happiness. One evening, As the moonlight filled the sky, Emma received a surprise visit at her apartment. It was Thomas. He stood at the door, holding a bouquet of flowers, his eyes filled with hope. "Emma," he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I want to thank you. You've helped my mother. You've given her everything she needed. And for that, I'm forever grateful." Emma smiled, her heart beating faster. "I just did what I could." Thomas stepped closer, his expression softening. "I know, but I also want to do something for you. You've helped me get my family back. Now, let me help you get your happiness." He took a deep breath, then said the words Emma never expected. "Emma, I know this might seem sudden, but I care about you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Emma felt her heart race, her emotions swirling. She had never imagined this moment, but now that it was here, she couldn't deny how right it felt. She stepped forward, her hand gently resting on his. "I care about you too, Thomas. But I never expected this. I never thought I'd find someone like you." Thomas smiled, his eyes filled with love. "I think we've both been through enough to know when something's real." And just like that, Emma realized that everything she had been through had led her here, to this moment, to this new beginning. In the end, it was love and kindness that brought everything full circle. Robert had been held accountable for his actions. Sophia, who had left Grace all those years ago, returned too late, only to find that Thomas had moved on, and so had Grace. But Thomas, in his own way, forgave her. Grace, Daniel, and Thomas became a family again, united by the strength of their bonds and the healing of their hearts. And Emma, who had walked through this journey with them, found herself building a new life, one filled with love and hope. For each person in this story, the seeds they had planted, whether good or evil, had grown into something that shaped their futures. But it was love, kindness, and responsibility that ultimately paved the way for a new chapter, a fresh start, and a happy ending. As we come to the end of this story, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've learned. Life is full of challenges, moments that test our strength, our faith, and our willingness to forgive. But through it all, we have the power to shape our destiny. Grace's journey shows us that no matter how lost we may feel, there is always hope for a new beginning. Even when life knocks us down, we have the strength to rise, to heal, and to rebuild. But that healing doesn't come alone. It comes from love, from kindness, and from the support we give to one another. Thomas, Daniel, Grace, and Emma the nurse remind us that our past doesn't define us. Our mistakes don't have to control our future. The true essence of life is not about what we've lost, but about what we can still gain. Through forgiveness, through second chances, and through our willingness to embrace love when it shows up in unexpected places. The story of Robert too teaches us something powerful. Actions have consequences. Every choice we make shapes the path ahead. So let this story be a reminder that kindness and integrity will always lead us to a life of fulfillment and peace, while betrayal and selfishness will only leave us empty. The most important question I leave with you today is this: what kind of legacy are you creating with your actions? Will you be a force of healing, of love, and of change, like Emma? Or will you let bitterness and regret hold you back from your true potential? Whatever your answer, remember, it's never too late to start again. You have the power to change the direction of your life, no matter what you've been through. So, ask yourself, are you ready to create a future filled with love, kindness, and hope? Are you ready to take the next step in your journey? The time for change is now. Don't wait. If this story has touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to join our community. Let's continue this journey together, one story at a time. Keep spreading love, keep spreading hope, and most importantly, keep believing in second chances. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.